I'll say this. We're never going to truly understand the Taylor Swift phenomenon. For anyone who was living under a rock, last week Taylor Swift released her 11th studio album entitled The Tortured Poets Department. Ooh, very deep, very meaningful. I did not listen to it. I have not listened to it. I don't really have any plans on listening to it. And I don't dislike Taylor Swift, and I'm going to talk about that in the video. I don't know. It's just not really something that's on my to-do list. And so if you're coming on here expecting a fully comprehensive review, you've come to the wrong place. There's much smarter, greater outlets that can provide a more thoughtful analysis of that album from people who actually listened to the album. What I wanted to do today is I want to talk about Taylor Swift, the entity, because I think this particular album for her is very interesting because, in my opinion, it represents the apex of fandom. I've said before, I think Taylor Swift is the most famous person of my lifetime, and obviously I stand by that. But when you look at the last year, she had the biggest concert tour ever. That concert tour was then turned into a concert movie, which I think was the #1 movie in America, maybe even the world, the weekend or two that it came out. Woman took over the NFL with her relationship with Super Bowl champion Travis Kelce, and now she has the biggest album in the world. She is on an all-time heater, unlike anything I've ever seen from any celebrity in my lifetime. Taylor Swift fandom is very interesting to me. The only thing that I can compare Taylor Swift fandom to is like Marvel fandom or Star Wars fandom. Credit to her, she has built up this like fervent religious type fan base and this obsessive phenomenon that I want to talk about today. People might want to know what I think of Taylor Swift, and in general, I find her totally inoffensive. I give her mad props. She became a star when I was in like 5th grade, and she has retained A-list status ever since. In fact, she's actually become a bigger name. She is a once-in-a-generation celebrity, and there are plenty of Taylor Swift songs that I like. I'm just not the kind of person who camps out at midnight waiting for her album to drop. Do people still camp out? I don't know what I guess they camp out on their couches and wait for the album to drop on Spotify. It's inevitable that any person who is as famous as Taylor Swift is right now is going to deal with the inevitable hate and backlash. You've already seen people who think that she's ruining the NFL, which, like, quick sidebar, if Taylor Swift was ruining football for you, you probably didn't like football that much to begin with. And so, like I said, while I'm not a Taylor Swift obsessive, I don't hate her. I don't live in fear that her and her army of liberal propagandists are going to break into my house and chop my penis off every night. But it is clear that there are people who kind of have that concern regarding the power that she wields. Some men are just afraid of powerful women. Well, Taylor Swift has definitely dipped her toes into the political ponds in the past. Our world's need to politicize every single person that becomes famous is wildly annoying. Taylor Swift doesn't write like anti-war anthems. She writes breakup songs. And they're well-written breakup songs. You know, they're artfully done breakup songs, at least the ones that I've listened to. But there's the amount of think pieces that come out about Taylor Swift and what she represents to America, what she represents to society. Is she hurting society? I just think is nonsense. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe we've dug our own grave because we live in an era in which Aaron Rodgers was like potentially going to be a vice presidential candidate. So congratulations, Taylor Swift, on making it to the Oval Office in 2032. Where this all stems from is that so many people, especially people in the media, write these think pieces and these exposés about Taylor Swift and her legions of fans in an attempt to understand the phenomenon. Here's the truth, and I can say this as somebody who's not a Taylor Swift obsessive, but who's been very obsessive about other things. You will never truly understand Taylor Swift fandom, and that's okay. Taylor Swift makes music, and music is art. And art moves people. And what moves people is completely subjective. The entire art form is subjective. And not only is it subjective, but what moves people also has a certain kind of randomness to it. I'm not a Swiftie, but I am a softie. And you're talking to a guy who has cried on the internet over the following things: the trailer for Star Wars The Force Awakens, Avengers Endgame, a combined no-hitter for the Detroit Tigers, getting hired by a media company, watching his coworker's favorite college baseball team win the College World Series, Michigan winning the national championship, the remake of West Side Story, and an opening day at Comerica this year in 2024. If there's any human being who should know a thing or two about weirdly getting emotional over bizarre things, it's this guy. Yeah, look, when I watch videos of people weeping, like openly weeping and screaming at a Taylor Swift concert, I find it a little bit silly, but it's no sillier than the people who dress up at Comic-Con and go nuts when Marvel shows off their trailers at Hall H. Now, keep in mind, I'm like one of those guys. I grew up loving Marvel. I grew up loving Star Wars. I love that type of fandom, but I also think it's hypocritical to be like okay with one and claim to not understand or not get the other. I would actually argue that Taylor Swift obsessives are probably one of the more healthy of the bunch. I mean, definitely more healthy than sports obsessives or, God help you, political obsessives. I don't know of anyone who's punched a TV or started an insurrection because they disagreed with the lyrics to Cardigan. I've already accepted that I probably won't live as long as I should because I love the sports teams I root for so much that they're going to end up taking years off of my life. I can't imagine that Taylor Swift is going to have that same impact. Now, with that said, some good men and women probably lost their lives trying to get hands on Eras Tour tickets, but those are the sacrifices you have to make. About 5 years ago, Martin Scorsese controversially said that he does not like Marvel films. He doesn't view them as cinema. This was treated with a lot of criticism, and I'm not really sure why. Martin Scorsese is a brilliant filmmaker, but I wouldn't expect an 80-year-old to fall in love with the comedic banter between Paul Rudd and a CG raccoon as they go off to space to fight the giant purple alien. Again, that's coming from somebody who loves those movies, but it created this discourse on the internet that continues to exist where we fail to acknowledge that personal taste is just a thing. And I think people run into that same issue when they talk about Taylor Swift. And I also think that people undersell it when they say that Taylor Swift is just another pop star. I mean, I've seen a lot of pop stars in my life, and that's not to say that pop stars aren't capable of putting out great music. I grew up on Katy Perry. Dua Lipa puts out bangers, but Taylor Swift has taken on a more iconic status, and I think you're objectively wrong if you fail to notice that. If you listen to her album and you don't like it and you just don't like her music, that's fine. I mean, like, that's, again, all of this is completely subjective, but there's a difference between not liking the music and not understanding the fandom. And for a long time, I didn't get it. And I felt like I was missing something. Like, what is it about this woman in particular and her music that moves people the way that it does? And ultimately, it's okay to come to the conclusion that the only way to get it is to understand that you don't get it. So, go nuts, Swifties.